Hello everyone, my name is Neptune Rises, and I'm a roster staff member at Affliction Esports. I'm going to be doing the extra content this week, as no one else really stepped up to help me out with it, so here I am, yay! Just a heads up in advance, I don't do casting normally, so sorry about the poor video and slash image quality. I kind of threw this together pretty quickly so I can get this out to y'all before the games tonight. And yes, I'm recording this about 4 hours before the games actually begin, so yeah, last minute kind of thing. Anyways, before we go any further, let's hop over to the spreadsheets that we got so far. So, just looking at this, if your name is in this red, that means you are not eligible to play. If you think that this is wrong, please put it in the staff help channel so we can figure it out and make sure you're eligible to play. If your name is in blue, it just means you have alt accounts. And if your name is in orange, which I don't know if we have anyone in orange right now, we don't. Then you're going to be on a win rate contract. So those will be assigned to you soon. So if you get one, you're just going to have to type that you acknowledge that you're getting a win rate contract and play the certain amount of games, however many it may be every week. The spreadsheet as of right now still needs to be updated. So if you see some weird stuff, like for example, Stixflux is still here even though he was removed, I'm going to be updating that right after I do this. So yeah, it should be updated way before game time. And if it hasn't, you can all yell at me. Or the founders, I don't care. It all works. Anyways, let's move on to the first game. So the first game, we have TsqBB versus Rockport. This was a 30-minute game where TSQ kind of just lost. Rockport played really well. They're one of our undefeated teams so far, so, you gotta assume that they're gonna do pretty well into the entire series. Haven't lost a single game yet, and they're just continuing to show their dominance. Right here, a little interesting to see that Potato Man actually held his own for a while in this game. He's going even with gold on his opponent, not Boss Road Northwolf. But other than that, everyone else kind of fell behind in gold. Boss Troll playing Poppy Jungle is kind of interesting, but he played it really well, 5-2 and 10 with 121 CS. It's nothing you can complain about. And then the real big numbers came in from Jabo Wookiees and Heat Viper, who both put out insane numbers in gold amounts. I mean, beating their respective laners by 6,000 and 3,000 gold. I mean, that's a 10k gold difference right there between the two. And winning by 16,000 gold in 30 minutes is nothing to scoff at. So moving on to game two. Game two of TsqBB versus Rockport is more or less the same. Just very little deaths for this game though. Bostro pulling out something a little weird still, the Pantheon jungle. We've seen it a few times, but it hasn't been played too much in this league. But the Cho'Gath Northwolf, once again, doing really good work on it. Potato Man unfortunately doesn't able to hold his own this game and actually has the most deaths on his team. And it leads to a big gap topside. Drable, once again, going 208, nothing to complain about there. And Heat Viper 317. Overall, they just kind of took what leads they had and made it work for them. Another 14,000, 15,000 gold difference. And yeah, they just made this work. Interesting to see, though, how they only let, they got even no towers in this game and only gave up 2 dragons as the objectives. So they really had a really strong game. Almost perfect game if they didn't die and gave those dragons. So yeah, Rockport is still one of our undefeated teams, so I'm interested to see how they do the rest of this series. So moving on, we have Lit Club versus Collective Odyssey. And this game is another 2-0 for Lit Club. And we can see that Stand Ready going unkillable. 308. Kane going 138, not bad for the jungle, but with a lot of assists there helping out his lanes, especially LGA and Swaddlewill, who respectively went 13-0 and 10. Sorry, combined went 13-0 and 10. With a ton of CS, ton of gold difference, they just used those 2 lanes to carry the game. I-25DB tried his best, but even with the lots of CS and the decent KDA, just couldn't manage to hold his own. And Rengar going 1-5 and White Chlamydia going 0-5 as well certainly can't help this matters. So game two of Lit Club versus Collective Odyssey. We have another pretty big stomp here. I mean, a 10-3-10 Mordekaiser is always going to be scary, especially as he's going on to that second and third item. And even fourth item in this game. Once again, Keen doing well, helping out his lanes, getting his top laner fed, his ADC fed, and his mid laner fed. Um, it just worked really well here. White Chlamydia picked out the Cho'Gath, which I still think is one of the strongest top laners in the game right now. So I think we're going to see a lot more of him, but even doing 5-7-4, and I'm assuming a stack or two, he wasn't able to hold this game on for very long. And Rengar playing the Shaco jungle, something we haven't really seen in this league so far. It's kind of an interesting pick. I mean, it does a lot of damage, and the Gale Force helps him escape situations really easily, and with his Q, he's just practically unkillable at certain times. But he still died a lot this game for Shaco, so if he wants to keep playing, it's something we're going to have to say, hey, just stop dying so much. And that goes the same with I-25DB and Jarny Show, who had 10 and 7 deaths respectively. Really hurt them this game. A lot of deaths, probably gave up a lot of objectives as well. Moving on to the next series, we have the Trench versus Lee Sin to Your Heart. So the Trench is another one of those undefeated teams, and this game shows exactly why they're undefeated and the top runnings for taking the entire league. I mean, 16, 1, and 29, one death in 23, almost 24 minutes. That's really good league. 5-0 Zerath, and the only death being on the Shen, but it's a Shen. He does what he wants. Josh playing the Gragas jungle, which is something else we haven't seen a whole heck of a lot of, but plays it pretty much perfectly. And then Zerg and Blaine doing what they can bot lane, just make it annoying, getting a lot of kills on Tristana. I mean, only a 1,500 gold difference between the two, but the big goal differences really come from mid lane, top lane, and the support roles. So moving on to game 2, we get more or less the same thing. Another game where only 4 deaths, and they played really well together. It's 21-4 and 51 as the team KDA. This is a really rough game for Isa Boomstar, who tried to play the Gnar this game and just nothing clicked for him. I mean, 0-7-2 on a champ that really wants to get some kills and scale, it's just not going to cut it ever. It's only a 3,000 gold difference, but not even 3,000. But because it's a Malphite, he's always going to provide so much utility with his giant R. And having Gragas, Galio, and Jhin, there's so much frontline for that Jhin. He gets to do whatever the heck he wants. Phantasm going 0-5 is kind of rough as well. Not really helping out the team there, but Wiggy and Razor Leaf doing their best to keep the team in the game for as long as they can. It just wasn't enough. Zerg and Josh just are too strong to do too much damage in this game. So this is another team that's undefeated so far, so looking forward to seeing how they do against our other undefeated teams later on in the season. So the next games we have are TsqA versus Hibernation, and this is the only series that went to 3 games. All the other series were a 2-0 for the respective team that won. So for this one, we have a TsqA victory. Blue Chocolatey playing the Renekton, doing a ton of damage. 6-1 and 2, 237 CS is very nice, especially with a 4,000 gold lead top into the Pantheon. It's always going to be a good thing. Arcario, 7-2-10, and Corazonal 6-3-10. Really heavy team fighting team, and it shows here in the stats. Only thing that's a little lackluster is Bean Salty's gameplay. I mean, he went 3-2-14. That's a lot of assists, but for an ADC, you're typically looking for a few more kills on that. Make the Aster a little bit more damage, unless you're just going for the poke, in which case 3-2 and 14 is perfectly fine, because that W volley can be very annoying very, very quickly. The Outsmouch here definitely had one of the worst performances he's had all season in this game. Doing 2-6 and 7, just only 100 CS. He never really got a foot in the door. And compared to Arcario, who had 12,500 gold, he only had 8,500. So 4,000 gold lap between the two right there was definitely one of the bigger parts of the 15,000 gold difference. And then Punchnello, the transfer from the Trench, actually held his own pretty well. New team, and he definitely did the most damage and had the most gold. So looking forward to see if he can work with his team more in the next couple of games and the rest of the series. So the next game, TsqA versus Hibernation game 2, we get a Hibernation victory. So now it's a 1-1 series. Like I said, it's the only series to go to 3 games. And this one was really well played from the Outsmouch and Punchnello. Or Punchnello, sorry. Together, they completely destroyed the teams, 12-3 and 11 for the Outmouse and 11-2 and 9 for Punchnilio. That's just crazy numbers they're putting up with really big goal differences between the two. And then the Malphite and Galio and Maokai to support that is just so much CC in front line. There's no way you're getting behind that, especially as the Silas and the Pantheon try to get onto you, try to get onto Punchnilio. There's just no way. They're going to get CC'd, feared, knocked back, knocked up. It's just so much CC that they have to deal with, and they just couldn't deal with it. Bean Salty tried to do what he could, and he had a lot of gold and damage, but unfortunately just wasn't enough compared to the full disengage comp that Hibernation had. And now going on to game 3, the only game 3 we had, we get a victory for TsqA, so they come back and take it. Bean Salty this game absolutely playing out of his mind. 11-1 and 14, so much damage just by himself, and he completely killed it. This game was won by him almost solo, and then Arcaria and Corazonal came up and supported him to keep the victory going. The Outmouse here, once again, didn't have a great game, but definitely not as bad as game 1. And Punchnilio and Kopek just really never got going. Fiendfire definitely not helping things by going 0-9 with only 6,000 gold compared to Tet going with 8,000. But support gold difference isn't all that important. But the fact that he was never able to disengage for his team and be a real presence in the team fights means that they just couldn't fight ever. And it showed with Bean Salty getting picks left and right. So TsqA taking the victory in 3 games. Then we get an interesting situation. So ShotsFire versus Oasis was originally a ShotsFire 2-0. But unfortunately, after looking through StixFlux, the ADC of ShotsFire, we have come to the consideration that he is a Smurf and he is not playing on his main. Due to this information, all the games that StixFlux was played in, which was only this week's series, thankfully for ShotsFire, was turned into losses. So Oasis actually lost their first series, but because this was a Smurf, they get the victory. Although even with StixFlux being a Smurf, ShotsFire definitely still played very well. I think with Tron leading this team, they definitely still have a good shot to come back into the series. They've had a rough 2 weeks to start off, but I don't think it's the end of the world. I think there's definitely some teams that they still have potential to beat, and I think they can become middle of the pack or even top 4 or 5. Well, that's actually middle of the pack. If they continue to play the way they did with this new ADC that they have. It'll be interesting to see, and we're looking forward to it. And just on as a side note for this, we as a staff team are constantly looking for any kind that someone is smurfing, cheating, not using their mains, not posting all their alternate accounts. And we will take care of it. It may take us a couple days, but we will take care of any suspicions that we have by either doing win rate contracts or other investigations. So now let's look at the standings that we got. So these standings are updated on 131, which is when all last week's games happened. And so far, we have... actually, these are incorrect, because Oasis should be 2-0 as well, with a 5-1 standing. So they will be in first place when these are corrected. So sorry about that, Oasis. You've had the most games won, so you will either be first or tied for first with the 2-0 match score. But still, we have a few undefeated teams now with TsqA, TsqA, the Trench, and Rockport now undefeated with Oasis. So it'll be interesting to see what happens these next weeks where some of the higher contenders all play each other to see what's going to happen. So now on to predictions. So these are these week's games, and at the time of recording this, unfortunately, some of the games have already been played. So I'm not going to put the results for these games because those will be in the next week's extra content/game review video. But we'll go over the ones that haven't been played yet. So the first one that hasn't played is Oasis versus TsqBB. So I think this is going to be a 2-0. I think Oasis is just looking so strong. TsqBB unfortunately just isn't looking as strong as some of the rest of the teams in this league. And even with Oasis going against a smurfing ADC and ShotsFire, they've played so well. And if that wasn't a smurf, it probably would have been a 2-0 victory for them. So I'm looking forward to this game though, and if TsqBB wants to show that they have what it takes to beat some of these teams, this is the game where they can show it. If they even take a game off it, I think it's a good kind of path for them to continue trying to rise up through the ranks, as this is one of the better teams in the league. The next team that we have is Collective Odyssey versus Hibernation, and I think this is going to be a Hibernation win. I think that they're going to go 2-1 victory, and I think that Hibernation's still one of the better teams. They're currently 0-2, but I think that they have the chance to really come back and play well. I mean, they took a game off TsqA, which is one of the better teams in the league that's still undefeated. And Collective Odyssey also hasn't played amazing in the games they've played so far. They lost to TsqA as an 0-2, and they also lost to Lit Club as an 0-2. So I think because they haven't won a game yet, they'll try to really hard to take one here, maybe doing something cheesy. I think they'll get one win, but I think Hibernation's going to pull through and take the victory in the series. And then the last prediction is Lit Club versus ShotsFire. So this is one of the more interesting predictions to try to make, because Lit Club's been showing to be one of the better teams. They took a game off of Oasis, and they 2-0'd Collective Odyssey. I think that Lit Club is going to 2-1. I think that ShotsFire, because they're having changing rosters, I think that they're hard to scout. And if this new ADC is able to play at a good level, I think they'll have a chance of taking a game off them. But I think Lit Club's such a solid team that they're not going to be able to win this series. But I definitely have faith that they will take a game off of them. And yeah, that is the end of this. Just looking over the games and stuff, going back to TsqBB versus Rockport, I'd say the overall MVP of Game 1, which this is the result page for Game 1, and for Game 2, I think Bostrel was the MVP, providing a lot of support to his team, and helping them take victories in every single lane. In Lit Club versus Collective Odyssey, this is Game 1, and this is a Lit Club 2-0. I think that the MVP of this game is LGA, for consistently doing really well in both games on his Assassin champions to help carry the game by doing 6-2 on Yone and 9-0 on Yasuo, and helping carry his team to that victory both times. For the Trench versus Listen to Your Heart, I think the MVP of the series, this is Game 1. Whoops. And this is Game 2. I think it was Josh. Josh went 9-0 on Gragas. In Game 1, he went 3-0 on Gragas, so 2 really good Gragas games to help get his team where he needs to be. And he played really well and really consistent for both games. I mean, no deaths on either game. So yeah, that was really good. And then for TsqA, this is Game 1. Game 2, this is a TSQ 2-1 victory. 3. I think Bean Salty was the MVP definitely of Game 3. And maybe even Game 1 as well. But I think Arcaria and Corazon also are really contenders for the MVP award, as they helped a lot in Game 1 to help carry that team to get them off onto the good right foot and the victory to start. And unfortunately, Hibernation on Game 2 wasn't able to do enough, but Punch Neely and Ouchmounts definitely take MVP for their respective victory, as they just completely carry their team, and it'll be interesting to see how those two can perform in the next upcoming weeks. So yeah, that's the end of this stream. I will leave you on these games to be played for later today. As this is Super Bowl Sunday, a lot of the games are rescheduled. So I don't know when the next predictions / content is going to be. I also have to wait for all the games. But thanks for watching, and if you want to flame me, #TrashTalk, get the roll. And yeah, good luck to all the games tonight, and we'll see you later.